Listen, let's get into the breaking news, gentlemen. This is big. This is coming the way again. It's being reported by many people. I specifically took the report from Tom Warren of The Verge because I like Tom, even though I don't agree with him on everything. But I like Tom, and again, he probably doesn't agree with half the stuff that I say, and that's fine. Opinions, folks, we're allowed to have them. But I do like Tom as a journalist. I consider him to be tip of spear, just like Jez Corden and a few other ones that I enjoy reading their stuff. He reported earlier this morning at 10:38, more specifically, Sony is reportedly working on a PlayStation 5 handheld. This comes the way of Bloomberg, who's reporting that Sony's handheld device is years away, much like Microsoft's, and is designed to be capable of running PlayStation games natively. So this is big news. It's also not surprising. So let me just get this out of the way. When I say they have, and I say they, PlayStation or Sony Interactive Entertainment has a leg up on Xbox, I don't mean it like they have a leg up on technology. They have the portal. The portal exists. It released last year. Now, granted, when it released last year, if you didn't have good internet, if your console shut off for some reason and you were somewhere else, you basically were carrying around a paperweight. It was useless. You've heard Keasante on not only his own tech show, which will be live tonight with John Wolf, but you've heard him on Primetime Gaming say that they basically nerfed this handheld. It could do so more. Well, last week, Mav, we got an update that you're going to be able to play games via PSN or PlayStation Plus. That's a really big deal. You still are only cloud streaming because there's no hardware on the device, which is what makes it light, unlike the rumor that's coming out of Bloomberg, where they're going to have a native console, meaning you'll be able to download your games onto this device. Now, it says here that it's years away. I'm still I'm again going back to talk about Xbox. I know Phil Spencer said literally we're a few years away. A few years is what? 1 or 2, right? 2, at least 2, a few, right? That's 2. Does it mean 3? Does it mean 4? Does it mean 6? I don't know, depending on what definition you want to go with. I honestly believe, and I'm not going away from this. If I'm wrong, folks, I'll come right out here and just admit that, I got egg on the face. But I think that Xbox has been working and has been cooking with this for quite some time. Does it come out this year? No. Does it come out next year? Well, that obviously that your mileage is going to vary on what you think. I personally think very similar to what we saw with the Xbox Series X and the Game Awards. They showed it in 2019. It came out in 2020. I think that there's a really good shot that they are ahead of Sony. And I mean ahead on the portable, not a Portal 2. Sony is working on that. We heard this a couple of, like last year. There was a rumor, a PSP 2 or a Vita 2, whatever the heck they were going to call it. You knew that they were going to get into handheld because of the portal. Now, the portal in itself, when it first launched last year, not the greatest. With the new update, it actually is worth getting for $200, especially if you have a lot of PlayStation games or you're subscribed to their service. Getting to the Xbox, well, I still think, Mav, that they show it off at the Game Awards this year and it releases next year. Could I be wrong? I'm probably wrong, but I'm still going to die on the hill because it's my gut feeling. I don't think that if the longer they wait, Mav, you're going to be contending with the Switch 2, the Steam Deck 2, the ROG Ally 2, and all the other 2s from all the other companies. They cannot keep waiting on this. And the difference here, and Tom Warren actually says something regarding PlayStation games running on an Xbox. Check this out. So I guess it's somebody I muted, so I don't know what they said. And obviously they're muted or blocked because they're just knuckleheads, and it's fine. He says Microsoft's handheld will also run PlayStation games because Sony puts their games on PC. And this is assuming that this handheld is going to be similar to a Steam Deck or to a ROG Ally. That's a really big deal because if it's an open source, like the console is rumored to have, where you be able to play your Steam games and your Epic Game Store games, it is going to change gaming forever, and it's not going to be locked down to just the Xbox. And if they're doing it for the console, and that's the rumor, it makes sense that they do it, or at least try to do it with the handheld similar to, of course, the ROG Ally, the Steam Deck, and everything else. Let's get your thoughts on it. Does PlayStation, in your opinion, have a bit of an advantage because of the Portal, or no?
Well, I mean, this is a tricky question because I was honestly surprised that the Portal even sold like at all, to be honest with you. Because I mean, at launch, it's a console streaming device. You know what I mean? It's not a handheld within and of itself. It's an accessory that you have to have a PS5 for. I console stream all the time in my house on a tablet, right? Or I have a backbone for my phone that I can use as well. So
Nice.
this is like functionality that's existed since this generation was a thing. Ever since cloud streaming was a thing and console streaming, it's been around for a long time. You've been able to do this kind of stuff, right? So I was surprised at the Portal. I think they've done a really good job with marketing it. Yeah, this update adds extra features and functionality, but it's still stuff that I've been doing on Xbox ever since they started XCloud, right? Like
Yeah.
with the tablet and with playing on mobile. Like I've been streaming Xbox games that are in my library with Game Pass Ultimate for a long time now, for years. So, this is more about catch up to me with them, and they're getting to that point where they are finally starting to offer like we've said all along that technology wise and ecosystem wise, PlayStation's usually a few years behind, right? And they're always trying to push forward. But what PlayStation's better at is selling hardware. So what they've managed to do is sell hardware that people already have devices for.
Right.
People already have phones. They already have tablets. Like you don't need a PS Portal. You can use your phone or your tablet and do the exact same thing, right? So, but they're managed to market it as, "Hey, this is PlayStation's console streaming controller." Right? So you need this and manage to sell a lot of them. So this update does add better functionality to it. It makes it less pointless for me. Like if you were to want to buy one. But other than that, like I don't think it's like necessarily an advantage because if Xbox ends up releasing like a PC hybrid, like a ROG Ally type device that's themed Xbox, right? And you get access to the entire ecosystem. You know, the whole Xbox everywhere thing. You can access your games no matter where you are. So the games that you own, you can either cloud stream them, or the games that are native on PC, you can play them that way, and all that kind of stuff. You're adding way more functionality than something like a PS Portal has, right? I think it's going to be dependent more on what the competition is in that space. Now, Phil said like few years away when he was talking about the handhelds. So I don't know exactly what all they have planned, but we know they have different prototypes. And they also said they're going to be experimenting with different kinds of devices. So I expect whatever this PlayStation actual handheld device is going to be, that's years away. That's they're prototyping, and as the article said, may or may not actually end up coming out at some point, right? I think playing the PlayStation games natively on it, I think it's more of a like portable PS5, right? I think that's one of the options that Xbox is kind of working on, maybe like a portable Xbox Series S, Xbox Series X that you can kind of take anywhere and play your games natively on. That's the one that I think I would be most interested in, right? But then I think they're also seeing, this other market with the ROG Allies and all these other kind of things, and like, okay, well, if we sell our own version of that, then we could get on top of that market that adds functionality for the PC crowd. So you have one that's like more console gamer oriented. You have one that's more PC gamer oriented, and then you also have potential they could end up releasing something like the PS Portal because they were like, wow, they were actually able to sell those things that can just console stream, and now finally being able to play some games in the cloud. So the devices like that already exist for Xbox. You can go get a Logitech G Cloud right now.
Yes, which I have, and
Yeah.
that freaking thing. Listen, don't sleep on the G Cloud. That thing is awesome.
Right. So basically, what the PS Portal is saying they're finally getting able to potentially do is stuff you can do on the G Cloud right now with Xbox. There's nothing you can't do on a PS Portal that you can't do on a G Cloud with Xbox, right? So I think they're looking at that thing and how do we brand around that and get our hardware out there to kind of sell to the Xbox enthusiasts and Xbox gamers, because those devices already exist that allow people to access the Xbox ecosystem. For their whole Xbox Everywhere thing, it's like the only difference is okay if it's marketed and themed around Xbox at this point, maybe it's going to be more interesting, unless they actually make a native handheld,
Right,
which is the thing that I think is a few years away.
right.
So I don't know. As far as a leg up, I think PlayStation always has a leg up on hardware just because of the name and everything that they're doing with the marketing with their hardware. I mean, they just release devices that are overpriced and don't really support all that much, like PSVR 2, the PS Portal. I mean, they're really not something that I think is really bringing anything of value to the gamers because they're not really adding much functionality that doesn't already exist or that's being supported properly. Like the PSVR 2 wasn't really supported properly, right? So overall, we'll see how many units the PS Portal continues to move. I think they'll do well, but 3 years down the road, I think we'll tell the tale.
Yeah.
What's more interesting, I think they don't wanna get what they see both companies see the transition where, well, a lot of the younger crowd is the crowd that's growing up playing a lot of these games now. They're used to playing on tablets, they're used to playing on mobile, used to playing all these other things. They like gaming on the go, they like handhelds, they've been growing
Yes.
up with DSs and 2DS, 3DS, or, all these other kinda Nintendo devices. The Switch did gangbusters, primarily because it's not just a console, it's a handheld, right? Nintendo combined both of their markets into one market
Yep.
that was able to say, we're going to sell to the console gamer and we're going to sell this device to the handheld gamer. Their handheld devices have always sold like crazy, right? So the Switch as a handheld device was going to move 100%. Now, Switch 2 is going to be even more capable. And you're also going to see a lot more third party games going to the Switch 2. So I think what you see is Microsoft and PlayStation looking at this and being like, we can't get left behind in that because if all these gamers that are playing these third party games like Fortnite and Roblox or whatever just start all moving to the Switch because it's more capable, then we're going to get left behind on all these other things. So they need to have competing devices for the Switch 2. And they're maybe going to be a little bit behind, because if they're talking a few years away, Switch 2 is coming next year. But I think they really got to do something in that space because overall it's a space that's growing rapidly. Um, People are interested in buying handhelds. I know several people that have multiple. Fuzzy's talking about the Steam Deck, right? Imagine when the Steam Deck 2 comes out, that's going to be a huge deal. It's going to sell even way better. So overall, that's kind of just this whole new thing that's really started to evolve over the last couple of years. And they're seeing it. They both of them see the numbers going on
Yes.
with the sales of these things, and it's not a huge market right now for those other devices, but it's growing.
Yep.
And like they gotta make sure they capture it. So I do think they're both working on them. I mean, Xbox has already obviously said they are. A PlayStation now, it's been rumored for a while they were making one too. This report just kind of confirms that. So, but 3 years away, maybe for native devices, but maybe you get some interesting things in between.
I mean, listen, only time is going to tell. If it's 3 years away, man, I don't know. I personally think that both companies need to, put the pedal to the metal, so to speak. Specifically, Xbox. They have partnered with ROG Ally before. They've done some things on Steam to make playing Xbox games easier, right? But I'm sure they want their own hardware. And people like myself, look, I have a ROG Ally. It's great, but I'm not a PC guy, and it's very PC centric. What I'm looking for is a device that I can download games onto, take my memory card out of my Series X, possibly, plug it into this thing, and go. What it has to have is it needs to be synonymous with what I get on my console. When I press the power button on my controller, you get the Xbox logo, you go to the dash, you pick a game, and you go. That's what I want with the handheld. That is what they're working on right now. Now, Mav, you said something very interesting. Is there going to potentially be a streaming only device that's Xbox centric this year or for next year? And then, of course, a couple of years later, they release their own major handheld that may be an open source, which Sony's, look, I'm going to be honest with you. If I'm spitballing here, if I'm taking shots in the dark, Sony's portable, which is probably going to be very good. It's going to have a great screen. It's going to look nice. It's going to be nice and beefy in your hands, right? Pause, right? But it is also going to run only your PlayStation stuff. Now, whether that's PlayStation 3, 4, or 5, I don't know. But it's going to be a closed platform peripheral. That's my thought. I don't have it on good authority. I'm just making an opinion here. And that makes sense because that's very Sony-centric anyway, right? They barely put any of their games onto PC. Now they're starting to get closer. First it was 3 years, then 2 years, now a year, now some a day and date like Lego Horizon. So they may do a day and date thing for PC, but this console, whatever it's going to be for PlayStation, is going to be closed source. It's going to be PlayStation and PlayStation only. This is where I think Xbox has an advantage, because if they decide to make it very similar to a ROG Ally, to a Steam Deck, it is going to compete against those, have an open platform. You're going to be able to play your Steam games, play your Xbox games, play your Game Pass games. Listen, this Xbox, this is an Xbox commercial that everyone seemed to hate. I loved it. I thought it was brilliant because, again, they're not talking to me. I'm already invested. These are for the folks that been away from gaming for a long time, that have streaming services and be like, oh, what is this Game Pass thing? What is this? Call of Duty. Wait, I haven't played Call of Duty in years. What do you mean it's on the streaming service? And they go. That's what that commercial was for. Fuzzy, what do you think about this, man? Because, again, the Portal being what it is, it's a nice piece of tech. That screen is gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's a little light. I've used it. I've played a couple of games at my friend's house last year, and it looks fantastic. There's no doubt about it. But without streaming to the console, when that was the only thing it could do, again, not for me. The new update, that kind of changes things a bit. And obviously a native, let's download your game to this console. It's a couple of years out. How far out, we don't know. Let's get your thoughts on the breaking news.
I think it's great for Sony. It's a good next step move for them. I wasn't really interested in the Portal as far as like being a streaming box for my PS5, because I was already kind of doing that with my phone. Not that I greatly appreciate that. As far as it only really seemed to work well within my home's Wi-Fi. Outside of that, like if I'm at a hotel and calling back to my PS5, it would work. It's just that it wouldn't work well, and it didn't seem like the Portal was that much of an improvement overall. But in general, the streaming, it has its limitations, and I think if they make something like the report is leaning towards, where it's going to play native on that box, that's great. That will be probably their best step forward, but it also needs to cross this new threshold of being able to possibly access PC games. That's going to be one of those things where Sony is still on the fence on how far they dip their toes into the PC space. It looks like they're learning the hard way with some of their decisions, whether it be with Helldivers or having a PSN for things like God of War or Ghost of Tsushima, Director's Cut, and all that stuff. that's going to be their thing to try and learn from. And I'm actually surprised that it's years away. I mean, I understand if they're waiting for next gen or that next generation leap of tech as far as chipset and stuff like that, but I think they could actually release something now that's more in tune with like a Steam Deck or a ROG Ally, or just basically have it where that portable or the Portal has the ability to have an SSD on it and download some games and play the games. Now, I know it's easier than just or not easier. It's actually harder than just putting a SSD in there, but I think that's something that they should be able to, spin up in a couple of years, or at least I would think they should be able to, but we'll see what it pans out for. But I'm still holding my breath as far as for Xbox with a handheld. I didn't like when Phil said several years out, because several to me means 2 or more, and I'm kind of hoping that we get something next holiday. Would love to see it at the Keeleys this next month, and then something that we can pre-order or purchase for next holiday. That to me would be ideal, especially trying to beat out maybe the Steam Deck 2 and ROG Ally 2 type of fanfare that's going to be coming probably shortly thereafter. And you don't want to give the Switch 2, even though it's not going to be your direct competitor, because it's kind of in its own lane, but they are going to be leaning more towards third party, not accessibility, but having access to more third party titles on this new hardware, because third parties will be able to build something without having to use sticks and berries kind of deal to get it to work on the Switch. So I think Xbox, if they are listening, like even a rebranded designed for Xbox Steam Deck would be ideal, even as a go-between at this point, where you can at least have access. Well, let's just call it out. You can have access to your Steam library, but I really want to have access to my console library on that same device, and even some of my Windows library that I've purchased on that device. Like, I think the biggest hurdle, and I think Xbox is probably the closest to being able to jump over that, is going to be, how do you satisfy third-party publishers with the whole licensing deal with the dual entitlement, which they do a lot of with their own stuff, obviously, but also third parties out there. And if they can create a device where you can play, your Steam games or your Windows Store games or your Xbox console games all on that same device, without it being necessarily streaming, just have it where it could play natively, I think that would be part of that biggest generational leap kind of thing that Sarah was talking about to some extent. I think AI is going to help in that regard as well, not in like the sense of what we expect for AI, but whether it's upscaling or things along those lines, kind of like the stuff that they're working software wise for Windows 12 and things in the background. I can't wait until Xbox at least gives us a not necessarily a roadmap, but like kind of like a spec sheet or something to expect for their handheld. But I'm hoping it's sooner than the PlayStation one, just for the fact that, you can play some PlayStation games now through Steam. So if they have something that has access to Steam, it's like, oh, well, now I have the box that, it actually should be the Xbox One at that point, because it's the one box that can play them all kind of thing. But I'm still leaning towards that Xbox Series Go naming. But portables, I understand they're not for everybody, but it is a good go-between. Like, there's a lot of people that have learned having like these portable PCs like the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally, Legion Go, and so forth, that for under $1,000, and in a lot of cases now, especially the earlier ones, for under $500 or even under $400, you have access to PC games that you still don't even see on console these days. So these console manufacturers getting into that same space, I think, will be a great bridge gap or great bridging of the gap between the PC and console space. And it'll just make us probably even busier as far as gamers, with bigger backlogs and less free time for anything other than gaming. But I'm looking forward to it. It's great that PlayStation's dipping their hat in it. Would be nice if it was a sooner thing for a native portable, but I'm really waiting for the Xbox portable, so that way I don't have to worry about waiting for the Steam Deck 2. If they launch it before Steam Deck 2, they have my money, easy peasy.